They all start with an idea and work ethic. When people come to me with the conversation, what I really do is just ask questions as far as what plans they have in place. It's great that you cook, a nice pizza for your family in the backyard on a Friday night and everyone says you have the best pizza. Well, you should open a pizzeria. Have you done any kind of financial analysis? Have you thought about the time you're going to have to put into it? Have you considered that things certainly are not going to go anywhere near the way you expect all the time? Do you have anybody who's got a business background who's going to help you out? Assuming that people check the boxes. I certainly don't try to scare people out of it. I don't want to take enthusiasm away, but the last thing you want to do is just talk people into setting up an entity or doing some documents for me to get a fee, and then it turns out that a year or two later that they've burned through their life savings or hurt themselves.
Welcome everyone to the Casandra Properties podcast. We are joined today by a dear friend and absolutely brilliant attorney, James Thompson. He is with Thompson Law, has started his own firm. They focus on real estate and business law here in New York and New Jersey. Really excited to jump in with James today. We're also joined by our amazing, wonderful, unbelievable, who I found out today is an operations manager because I just had absolutely no clue what the title is. Business partner, right hand, left hand, and everything in between.
Yeah, that was great.
Rebecca Madalonis. And we've got, as always, Petey on the ones and twos in the back there. So, James, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Looking forward to today's podcast. I know that, what we try and do here is deliver value. Right, we try and take the listeners through a journey and bring interesting guests on that offer some sort of value in one way or the other. And James has represented me now for a couple of years, right?
Yep.
And you have brought so much value to what we do on a personal and professional level. So I was excited to bring you on today and give the audience a chance to see who you are and what you're about. And just excited to share it with everyone today. As we often do, we like to talk about who the person is before we get into the business points. You are a native Staten Islander, and we found out just a little while ago you're 4 generations deep.
4 generations deep, yep. We have one boat from Scotland, 3 from Ireland, and we've been here since then. So,
did you ever trace the lineage and go back and...
I personally did not. My cousin, Chris, who is the president of the Firefighters Union in Portland, Maine, as a matter of fact, up in Rebecca's neck of the woods up in New England, he did a lineage search a few years back, and we have a lot of information from that on my the Thompson side of the family. Additionally, a family member of mine was a Major League Baseball player and hit a famous home run. Bobby Thompson was my grandfather's brother and hit the shot around the world.
That's so cool.
Whoa. How is Bobby Thompson related to you?
That's my grandfather's brother.
Are you kidding me?
Yep. So through him, we
James.
through him we he wrote an autobiography. So due to the home run, he says it's the best thing that may have ever happened to anybody. He knew sort of how special a moment it was, and there's certainly plenty of luck involved there. But beyond just for him, there was an autobiography he wrote, and then another biography that was written about him that cobbled together a lot of family history we might not otherwise have had. It did screw me up a little bit because there was an error in one of the books about. So I'm the 6th James Thompson in a row going back to Scotland. It's as far back as we can go. We don't know if there's any more. It could be 7, 8, 9. Who the hell knows?
Wow.
But as far as my middle name, I always thought I was the 3rd. We were reading one of the books around the time my son James was born, and it indicated that I was actually the 4th. So on his birth certificate, I put myself as the 4th and him as the 5th. And my cousin found out like a month later that wasn't correct. So I have to fix that at some point. But yeah, we've been in Staten Island for quite some time, and that's about it.
So for those who are not familiar, the shot heard around the world was a game-winning home run by the then New York Giants third baseman, I think, right?
Yep, third
Bobby
baseman.
Thompson against the Brooklyn Dodgers off Ralph Branca in the Polo Grounds back in
1951.
51.
Going to be 70 years this year, yeah.
And they won the pennant off that home run, right?
Yep, it sent them to the World Series, and don't recall if it was broadcast on TV, but there was one. Was
It was the first one broadcast on TV?
There you go.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh.
learned something new today. The famous radio call. It only survived because one person who was out at work, who was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, ironically, recorded the New York Giants radio station call and kept it, and somehow it made its way through.
Wow.
But my uncle, he took the Staten Island ferry home after the game that day, and they went to Tavern on the Green on Staten Island after the fact.
You're kidding me.
Yep, and it was actually he's said a number of times, it was my grandfather, who was his older brother, who helped raise him after my great-grandfather passed young. He said that my grandfather said, Bobby, they're going to be talking about this forever, and it just never sunk into his head because, I mean, it was a big deal, but back in those days,
sure,
even all-star ball players worked, they worked jobs in the off-season. Yeah. It was a little different, but he said that was the first time that he was told that. And a little trivia note that you may know, Willie Mays was actually on deck when he hit it. So,
unbelievable.
Yep.
So why was it called The Shot Heard Round the World?
It was there was a huge rivalry, and
Okay.
it was the home run that won the pennant for the team, taking them to the World Series. So it was an infamous rivalry, and it was an infamous moment, and the theatrics and drama of hitting a game-winning home run to win after you were grinding out, and back then it wasn't 162 games, right? I don't know how long.
144.
144.
144, yeah.
You're grinding for
It's cute,
143 games, and you're in the last game of the season, and all the work that you put in for that year comes down to that at bat, and you're the guy who hits the home run that propels you to the World
That's pretty
Series.
cool.
And it was broadcast to the people, the servicemen in Korea as well. They were listening.
Oh, okay.
That's really neat.
Really interesting. So think about just, I go off on tangents like the Tweety Birds, right?
That's what we're here for. It's more fun that way.
I had
That's right.
no clue
Agreed.
that we had we're kind of in the midst of a legend here
I
by
know.
extension. Like this is pretty cool.
That's a long extension. But I appreciate it.
Just in 1951 to think about, there was one dude who happened to be recording this, and that's why this infamous call, we
Yeah.
have access to it today. And conversely, not that much time has, and we're talking 70 years later, like this broadcast is listened to in 60 countries.
Yep.
Right? We just
Yep.
started it this year, and little old silly us is got an audience in 60 countries, and we get requests for book signings and crazy stuff, right?
It's incredible, right?
The power of technology and marketing today, it is quite remarkable. See, Petey's got it up over there.
There you go.
And there it is.
Oh, very cool.
Boom! Deep to left. It is high. It is far.
Look at the
It is
reaction.
gone.
I try to get my kids excited about it, show them every once in a while. They could care less. They mentioned it in the movie Little Big League. They said we watched that the other day and they got excited, but otherwise not yet.
Oh,
maybe someday.
So you've got a really famous family member, which is awesome. And now fast forward a couple of generations.
There we
You're
go.
a Staten Island guy, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And you've got a passion for law. Part of what drew me to you as we started to get to know each other in kind of our other life, right, which we do community work, and you do an amazing amount of community work. We'll touch on that
Thank
later. But you clearly have a passion for law, right? So growing up, were you interested? Did you watch law programs on TV, or how does that happen?
No, to be honest with you, it as many people's stories I'm sure do, it doesn't really have a ton of direction to it. I remember going to college in SUNY Albany, and it was my senior year was the year that 9/11 happened, and I mean the economy wasn't that great, but I still remember going across campus on my last final and saying, I'm never going to school again. I'm done. I'm not interested. I'd just go find a job somewhere.
Yep.
And if truth be told, over the summer coming out of college, I was not that tenacious in looking for a job. I looked for a couple things. There wasn't a ton out there. And my college roommate had taken the LSAT, and another close friend from college was in law school as well. And they both said, well, why don't you take the LSAT? Why don't you give it a shot? And I did, and thankfully did well on that, and got some offers. And I just had an interest in the law, probably know more or less than anybody else, and ended up at St. John's Law School and took it from there. Went the first semester, and you start intermediate school after grammar school, and they tell you it's going to be tough, and maybe it's not. They say the same thing for high school, same thing for college,
Yep.
and everyone says law school's going to be tough, and it's graded on a curve. So I figured everything else was going to be tough too, and I bombed my first semester. Did horrible. And I said to I had to get my grades up and stay in the school, which obviously I did, and luckily, was able to perform better academically after that. But what I said to myself is, I better get out there. I better start making some connections. I better intern, because I'm not going to be the guy coming out of law school with a 5-star resume. And with that, I started my first internship with Judge Phil Minardo, and did several after that, and that was really what grew my passion, seeing things in practice, just being around people, and seeing the way that you could sort of use the tools that the law gives you, and also the options career-wise to draw something up that you may like.
Wow. So there's so many fields within law.
Mm-hmm.
What made you choose real estate?
I can't really say that I chose real estate as much as it chose me. So I interned with Judge Minardo, and then next I interned with Dan Donovan when he was the district attorney. Mm-hmm. And criminal law it's dynamic, it's exciting, it's interesting. But I can just say from doing the work, I didn't love it. There was just something about it didn't click in with me. And I was actually heading into my third year. In addition to law school and the internship, I was delivering pizzas for Cafe Milano to make money, and I was driving up the block after making a delivery, and I look and I see another college roommate of mine. I see his father, and his father's a lawyer, and he's out watering his lawn. And I say to myself, should I go back and make the next $3 I can make on a tip, or maybe I should say hello to this guy. So I pull the car over and I talk to him. And his name's Bob Scammerdella. He ended up becoming my law partner, a great friend, wonderful mentor, great guy. And I was chatting with him, and he said, didn't think anything of it. And he called me a couple days later, and he said, we actually need an intern. You're interested. So I come.
You're kidding me.
Sort of little snap coincidence. And to answer, rambling answer, I guess I'm going off on a tweet for a tangent to answer Rebecca's question about real estate. The firm at that point was working on a project called the Tides of Charleston, which is the first 55 and over development in New York City, 190 units out by the Outer Bridge. And it was just at the point where it was coming out of development and the properties were going to start to be sold. And that was the need the firm had. It was in real estate. And I, started working on that, and then coming out of law school, the firm made an offer, and I stayed and got to work on the Tides, and that was how I ended up in real estate.
Wow. We talk
cool.
about like having those moments
Yeah.
where you can't put your finger on it, but something just tells you to do something outside of the norm or the pattern. And, as you're driving there in that moment and you're remembering it as vividly as you do, something prompting you to get out and go talk to this person and engage them, and it turns out to be just an unbelievable attorney and a legendary firm on Staten Island. And it's just crazy how the dominoes tip.
It's crazy,
Yeah.
right? All these things we do and plan to take big steps, and these little things you just don't think of really kick you on a course, and it's just kind of how it happens.
Absolutely.
It's pretty neat.
Did you have any family members that were in the law profession, or?
No. So both of my grandfathers were FDNY. My father was FDNY. All three of my brothers were FDNY. I mean, I'm the only male in my family pretty much who's not FDNY. But no, there was nobody else in the law business. I maybe distant cousin at some point in the past, I think, but nobody that I was connected to. That's for sure.
So we want to spend a lot of time talking about your practice and how you ended up, at this point making the move. But something else that moved me in this direction, and something that I was drawn to, is the work that you do for the community, and on business clubs, and you're out there, right? Was that an organic process, or I think you didn't you co-found the Executive Club?
Yes. That was
Okay,
one, yep.
Executive Club, Chamber of Commerce, Beanie Foundation. Like you're out there politically and in the business groups and in the civic groups. How did that come about?
Yeah, no, completely organically. So as you know, I described, my family's got a history of service, thankfully,
Yep.
but I didn't grow up in a business atmosphere. That wasn't something that I was around. And when I started at what was then Russo, Scamandella, and D'Amato, there was Guy Molinari was there. The Molinari lobbying group was run out of the same office, and this was at the time Mike Bloomberg was mayor. And I mean, you'd have Rudy Giuliani would walk into the office just all the time. I mean,
Wow.
you'd be walking down the hallway and you'd hear that John McCain was on the line for Guy. I mean, I remember there was a time the receptionist says George Bush is on the phone and he yells 41 or 43. It's like which one? But it was just a really cool atmosphere, and I was excited to be a part of it. And I would say that the firm always had a tradition, still has, of being very involved in the community. And as I described before, sort of about what got me into the law, being around people and just interactions and such, I wanted to be part of what the firm did. I wanted to be part of that culture. And what really got me started on it was I showed up at the office. I didn't know Guy Molinari from a hole in the wall. I mean,
Right.
I think most people would say he's the most accomplished, elected official Staten Island seen. If not, he's certainly. I mean, as high up as anybody in the
Absolutely.
conversation. I mean, closing the dump. I don't know if there's a bigger political accomplishment around here, but I don't know how he's going to treat me. I don't know. I mean, I'm just some intern off the streets. And he figure he's got no use for me, but just he knew how to connect with people. That was what he did. He always wanted to get to know everybody and see if there was something, that is some way to work with them. And he actually was the New York State co-chair for Rudy Giuliani's presidential campaign. And there was a point where they were running buses from Staten Island to New Hampshire, just day trips to go canvass door to door up in New Hampshire for the New Hampshire primary. And he calls me up one day and he says, "Jimmy, I need you to do me a favor." And what? You're not going to say no? And he says, "Can you just go to New Hampshire one Saturday this month? Can you take a ride up there? Let me know what it sounds like. Let me know what the word is in the ground." No problem. So I can't say I was thrilled about it. You're getting on a bus at like 5 a.m. I mean, Rebecca knows that rip up to New England. It's long.
It is.
And if you're going to do it, if you're not even staying 2-3 days, I mean,
Right.
other than primary weekend, we would turn around the same day, ride the bus back the same day.
Oh, wow.
But-
That's a long day.
Yeah, it was a long day.
Oof.
But so I did it, and I loved it. And the energy was, was tremendous. And at that time, the Republican Party on Staten Island had a lot of liveliness to it. There were a lot of people that I met on that bus who I've stayed in touch with and who are active to this day. And I ended up going up 6 out of the next 8 weekends doing the Saturday day trip. And
Wow.
that was sort of how I broke in with the Republican Party side of things, and sort of stayed involved in the community from there.
So the Executive Club,
Mm-hmm.
how did that come to be?
So, we're all involved in the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, the SIDC, which I only just got involved in a few years ago. But there's also, the Bucks have been a long-time presence in Staten Island, and they're interesting because they're a business group run by business owners. Most of them, I think, are, a couple of years, probably about, generation up ahead of me, and they've been together and close and strong in this community for quite some time. And I was chatting with Regina Bavlalova from Northfield Bank and Rebecca Yacobelis, who was an accountant. She moved to Staten Island some time ago, and we were saying, we'll never get into the Bucks. I mean, it's they're tight. It's one person per industry. You need not breaking in, but there again, we should start our own thing for our generation, and sort of that was really where the idea came from. And then at the same time, Corey shifted from Casal Jewelers, to give credit, to the 4 people who initially, really founded it. He got on board, and we started it, and we rolled from there. And just, I think, as most of these things go, they're not collections of people; they're concepts, right? And
Right.
I think people liked the concept that it was, for business owners, by business owners, managers. talking, speaking about, staying on point, staying on concept, trying to have good conversations about growing each other, not requiring referrals, and that was sort of how that started.
So we talk a lot now about the business coaching that we're doing and the importance of connecting. Mm-hmm. Becca is she's in the process now of finishing up to be a certified coach, and she will be exclusive to our company, kind of the Wendy from Billions, coach that is teaching people how to connect and tuning the agents up and making sure they have the appropriate emotional support.
Do we change the title from operations manager at that point?
Right?
Or?
Yeah, well, I guess is what I mean. It's like she does so many things. It's crazy.
Utility knife.
But up until recently, Jim, I didn't understand the importance of that side of it, connecting and slowing down. I had my head down working for so long and so hard that I didn't do enough of the networking stuff. I didn't do almost any of the networking stuff. We always did community stuff, always. But on the networking side, it's only recently that I started to really make a concerted effort to make sure that I was getting out there and I was networking and connecting. For me, it was candidly something I was uncomfortable with. Put me in my subject matter and I'll go. Take me out into small talk, I'm not so great. Is that something that's been second nature to you? Like you always been a connector? And
I would say no. I would say that I was more of a head down and do it myself and just I'm gonna work kind of person. And I don't know if it was a specific thing that drove me in that direction. I honestly think just that starting out, again, with the political stuff and some of the community involvement, I saw it as part of work. And in the beginning, I wouldn't have felt I was comfortable. But then you see the same faces so often, and they really become your friends. And then you walk into a room, and listen, maybe 80% of the people you don't know that well, or 80% of the people you're not going to speak to all night. You walk around, have your conversations, and then go back to your core base. But I think that was the part that really made me comfortable with it, because I agree with you. And I know that that's a habit I think that a lot of people in business have, is just put my head down by force of nature. I'm going to do what I need to do. But there's no doubt that if you listen to people who seem to have really achieved high levels of success at what they want to do, almost invariably they say that the people that they had around them helped to elevate them, and without those people they wouldn't have gotten there. So I think it's important to be out there connecting with people and finding new connections that can help you and that you can help as well.
No question. We put our head down and we work the way we work out of necessity, right? We don't have the resources as you're growing a business, and you're trying to, first of all, establish and get in, right, the door and keep the doors open and keep the lights on. And then you want to scale and you start to bring in different components and grow the business. And again, it's a draw on resources. So you don't have, most of us don't have the benefit of, having a huge war chest to fall back on. So out of necessity, I think you kind of fall into it. And then you remain in that groove, and next thing you know, 10 years have flown off the clock, and you're like, whoa.
And I think if it doesn't come naturally to you connecting, you don't necessarily see the value in it until either you've watched somebody else do it or you have somebody else on your team. I know we've had many conversations where I've told you, like, this happened out of this conversation and what has evolved from something else, and you were kind of like, really, like that happened from that, and I just because it's not something that he's comfortable with, he never really put a ton of thought into how valuable it can be.
Yeah. So you talked about having the right people around you and raising you up as you go. One of our guys, we have a book club here, again, part of the concerted effort to start connecting more, and I'm finding that I actually do enjoy it immensely. So on one of the recent chapters, he talked about if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yep.
Right? It's so important to get out there and connect with different people, and you'll learn so much. And most people, they want to help.
Yeah.
Most people just genuinely want to give you a hand and help you along and give you advice. And
in a worst case scenario, most people love to talk about themselves. Right?
Yeah.
That's so true.
Even if you don't have anything to say, if it's
true.
somebody you want to talk to, you ask them. They're going to be your friends.
Good point.
Really quickly.
so we've been working together for a couple of years. You handle a lot of the work for us here. What do I have to do to get an invite to the executive club, bro? I mean, really.
Anytime you want, come on
I'm reading
by.
the research that I put together, and I went, this freaking guy's the founder of the executive club? Are you kidding me?
Well, we had Nixon. Nixon was blocking you.
That's right.
Of course. All right. So back to work and being with the firm. You're making a name for yourself, and you're out there connecting dots. I mean, you're launching in one of the more notable projects on Staten Island with a developer, Ray Masucci, who's a very accomplished guy at the Tides and far beyond that. So you're kind of learning as you're going. You're building your book. You're getting some experience under you. Fast forward to a pandemic, right? And during this time, you make the decision that it's time for the next chapter.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, but taking a step back, obviously you start mid-March, right? And my son was born February 27th, so no one really knew what was going on around that time, right? It's just starting to creep in. Luckily, we have a lot of family here. I have 5 siblings. My parents are here. My sisters-in-law, mother, etc. And people want to come. You figure people are going to want to come by the house and see the baby, and so we luckily Leslie Casagrande from the firm that I was at had set up a new practice management software that really really just brought the firm into the new age and made it a lot easier to work remotely. So I was busy, but at the same time, I said to my wife, she was going to be stuck home for a while with the baby. And on top of that, we have 2 other very young kids. Why don't we go to the New Hampshire house? My mother-in-law's New Hampshire house. We'll get up there for a week. We'll get some quality time with the new baby. I'll work remote. I have the ability to do it. But, we think we're going up there. We're going to be able to go out to eat. We'll take the kids to, they have the little candlestick bowling alley, whatever. And the day we drove up there was the day that stuff really started to shut down. So long story short, we stay up there for 6 weeks, and I was busy as ever from up there. Yep. As far as just keeping things moving, going over, even if it was as simple as clients reaching out and saying, what do I do with my tenant? They don't have their doors open for business, but I have to pay my mortgage. And I have to say that people were so good. So good. Real estate can be ruthless. You guys know it. It can be very tough, but people really were, for the most part, trying to make sure that nobody got hurt in that situation. But I did learn from the pandemic the ability to, the legal industry did, to catch up and be able to work remotely and sort of do more with less in that way, which certainly eased the decision I made early this year, which was just to give it a shot, going on my own and be able to design. Luckily, my former partners, they're great people, great quality of law. Thankfully, law practice. We still do refer stuff back and forth, and it's all good. But from a business perspective, we saw things differently sometimes, and I just felt that it may be time to try to design my own thing. So, the pandemic, I would say again that it kind of taught me that maybe it's a little bit easier to operate a law practice remotely, and maybe gave me a little more confidence in the ability to do that quickly. But at the same time, the area of practice that I'm in, and the industry that you're in, it didn't slow down. No. It didn't slow down. I if anything, it was busier than ever, but one way or the other. So I can't really say that part of it impacted, unless the pandemic factors that really drove real estate to be as active as it is kind of made me comfortable that there's plenty of economic activity out there right now as I'm opening the doors.
So a lot of people, as we emerge, right, are taking stock of where they are in life. And as you had the experience, I think we've all had the experience during the pandemic, that there's a different way to do things, right? And I forgot the statistic. We were just reading something. A record number of people are not returning to work, and they're starting up their own companies, their own corporations, which is an area that I know you specialize in. So I thought maybe today we can talk people through, as they very well may be going through this and contemplating incorporating, starting an LLC. If we can kind of walk the audience through the different options. You're thinking of going out and starting a business, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with a great attorney like you, even though I didn't get the executive club invite.
You're never going to live that down.
I guess so.
Where do they start, Jim? Walk us through options and where do they start?
I think as you indicated before, they all, to keep it basic, they all start with an idea and work ethic. But when people come to me with the conversation, what I really do is just ask questions as far as what plans they have in place. It's great that you cook a nice pizza for your family in the backyard on a Friday night, and everyone says you have the best pizza. Well, you should open a pizzeria. Well, have you done any kind of financial analysis? Have you thought about the time you're going to have to put into it? Have you considered that things certainly are not going to go anywhere near the way you expect all the time? Do you have anybody who's got a business background who's going to help you out? So go through all those things, and then assuming that people check the boxes, I certainly don't try to scare people out of it. I don't want to take enthusiasm away, but the last thing you want to do is just talk people into setting up an entity or doing some documents for me to get a fee, and then it turns out that a year or two later that they've burned through their life savings or hurt themselves. But assuming that they do have their stuff together, what we do is we get the process started, sort of quarterbacking their team, which at the outset can be as simple as themselves, us, and an accountant, making sure that the business owner is setting things up right. Typically, most businesses will start as a limited liability company. Nowadays, some still do go for a corporation. I defer to the accountant for what's better from a tax perspective. From a liability perspective, for small businesses, it really doesn't make much of a difference. So we go either way, and then depending on what the structure is, we take it from there. If there's one person, it's pretty simple. You get their basic documents set so that they can go open a bank account, they can go lease their space, do whatever they have to do, and take it from there. If there's partners involved, then it's a much bigger conversation to make sure that the partners have things structured the way that they should, and that there's a general understanding amongst them as things start out.
So, assuming they've gone through, and I applaud you for encouraging people to diligence this, because I think part of the mixed messaging through the pandemic is the grass is always greener, right? And I think that people seeing on Instagram and Facebook and talking about how wonderful it is to be out and to be your own boss and to have your own company. It's not always roses, right?
No.
Yep.
There's an awful lot that goes into it, and it's not as easy as it may appear on Instagram.
No, I tell people when they form an entity, congratulations. I don't enjoy your day, but how many people sign up for a gym membership the day they get their card? They all think they're going to be in shape, but much less actually go every day and do it. True. And it's very similar.
So
very true.
As you're talking to clients and they've been through their diligence and they're ready to go, enter James Thompson, to move this forward. Is it an LLC versus a corporation? Is that more of a tax decision or is that more of a legal decision?
Tax decision.
More of a tax
decision for sure.
Okay, so after they've gotten to that next point, I know LLCs is something that we've used effectively. You've set up a number of them for us for single transactions, right? We're going to buy a piece of property. We're going to improve it one way or the other. We're going to sell the piece of property and we're going to shut it down.
Right.
So we're doing, from a protection standpoint, I'd be afforded the same protections legally if I did it through a C Corp or an S Corp versus an LLC?
Yes.
I didn't even realize that.
And to be technical, under New York law, it's a business corp, and then the CNS designation is a filing that the accountant makes for tax purposes. But yes, it's for a small business, it's the same protection. So
let's say that where it's not such a simple transaction and we have partners, right? Enter the wonderful partnership structure.
Well, you understand the value of these conversations because you've been through them before. You're a pro with it.
I certainly do. And having your steady hand has proven to be far more valuable downstream than you realize it is in the moment, right? As you're setting it up, and you know, it's almost, you're like, oh, you know, I got to go through another page turn on the partnership agreement. Does this crap really matter, right? Well, when you
100%,
you know,
100%.
at that point, we're all walking down the aisle together, right?
Yes.
Everything is all roses, and,
Yes.
and everyone is well capitalized, and everyone's got a vision, and everyone's going to be there, and then
and everybody wants to go, and I have to say slow down a little bit, and that's that's tough because you don't want to lose momentum. Momentum's a great thing, but
and it's a big but,
right. And you know, we've luckily, if you're speaking about our generation, you know, when people start up again, it's usually that, you know, it's energy, it's go, and it's a great thing. But you think everything's going to go well, and now we're at the point where a lot of people either they've been burned, or they've seen somebody who has, or they've had an issue to be concerned about, whether it amounted to something or not, or they're on a side business and they have less control, and documentation becomes more important. But there's a lot less of me pushing people to do it and people understanding the value.
So what are the things that you're pointing out to clients that they should be paying attention to, right? Why are we coming to you? I know why we're coming to you. I've seen it in real time. But let's talk to the audience about some of the things they should be paying attention to as they set up these partnership documents.
I think the number one most important thing is really, I mean, it's defining roles, but the number one most important thing is communication. As you said, everybody's walking down the aisle at the outset, and you know, there's nothing but good vibes. But there are going to be tough times in any business, and if you can't work through them, if you can't communicate, if you can only keep things going when everything is good, you're dead on arrival. So that's the thing that I point out to most people, is that you may not want to have these conversations now. They may be uncomfortable, but this is a very, very useful and excellent tool for you, because if you can't have these conversations with your partner, then you have a problem. Yeah. You have a problem. And the documents initially, the operating agreements for an LLC, shareholders agreements for a corporation, which are what set forth the way these things operate, they set the tone for everything, and it's important that they be gotten right. So to talk about some basic points that we'll speak through, the most important one, and it's not always specifically fleshed out, often because it can't be, is spelling out what the different roles are. I mean, there are entities where one person is the decision maker, and that has to be clear in the document, and everybody understands that. There are entities where somebody is putting up financing and they own a piece, but they're going to do nothing else. And I mean, and take it from there. And it's good to spell that out as much as possible, even if in basic terms, so that when somebody's sort of thinking about, well, he's not doing what he's supposed to do, well, no, this is what we all agreed to. So that's, I would say, is the most important thing starting out.
So I had a client back then who's now become a partner in certain things and a friend. When we were first starting to work together, just in a broker owner, property owner relationship, there were certain things that he wanted to edify in our listing contracts, and I took it personally. I was like, back then I was so thick-headed and stupid. It was like, you don't trust me, this is crazy. He is my senior 15 years or so, and he had said to me, because I value this relationship is why we're going to put it down in black and white, right? That's the reason we're going to slow it down, and that's the reason we're going to clearly articulate in the documents exactly what this relationship is going to look like, what my expectations are of you, and what your expectations should be of me. And if these things happen, here's the dominoes that tip after. So you seldom think about how unbelievably wrong you can be about what you thought you communicated.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we have disagreements with our best friends. We have disagreements with the people that we're closest to. And it's not... at the end of the day, these documents do govern if, God forbid, you go to litigation or something. But one of the biggest benefits is having what we call the chilling effect, that if somebody starts to think about, well, what are my interests? If you're just having a bad day with the other person and you're looking, where do we each stand? If that's there to sort of guide you back to the center of where you want to be, it's very, very helpful in keeping things the way that they're supposed to be. And as you pointed out, God forbid things go wrong, it is better off for everybody to just know where they stand. Because if that happens, you're going to naturally, your instinct is to go to your own corner. And if everything's already been spelled out, then maybe the process of unwinding becomes a lot easier. There's a lot less emotional capital spent, whether this person that you inevitably cared about when you started, if you're able to keep that connection with them, it's great. But at a minimum, at a point where things are probably in damage control, it minimizes the damage.
So, again, for those who are not as familiar and you're thinking about opening up and starting a company or a business, make sure that you're getting in the weeds, like on the full spectrum of issues, not just the items at hand. I know another exercise you had walked me through on one of the partnership docs we had done, spouses, right? Spouses become involved through divorces, through tragedy, if God forbid somebody passes.
Yep.
And
not to laugh at divorce or spousal death, but
we all have the stories where it triggers kind of things that have gone on, and it's like
that is the main point that gets people's attention when it starts to wander. When we have the conversation about why do we need to do this? I'm not comfortable having this conversation with my partner right now. Well, God forbid something happens. Do you want to be in business with your partner's spouse? Do you want your spouse to be running the business with your partner?
Right.
And usually the answer to one or both of those questions is no. And it gets people's minds thinking that we have to put some kind of a contingency. We have to have some kind of a plan in place. We can't just assume that everything is going to go the way that we want it to all the time. And then the conversations tend to start with a lot of commonality, because at the end of the day, these agreements usually treat people, if not exactly equal, pretty equal. So you're looking to figure out something that works for everybody. And then it becomes a collaborative conversation and moves away from the feeling that, hey, this is us going toe-to-toe with each other as partners.
Yeah, if you can't have the uncomfortable talk with your business partner now when things are all rosy, right?
Yeah.
You sure as hell are not going to be able to have the conversation when things are tough.
No, and exit strategies are important. Absolutely nobody, whether it's by choice, whether it's by death, nobody can run their business forever. So you really should be thinking from the beginning what the exit strategies are. Is your, whether it's an active business entity, whether it's a real estate LLC, which in ways is more passive, is this something that you would like to pass on to your family? Is this something that a partner is going to take over? Is this something that you're going to get off the grounds for 3, 5, 10 years, and then at some point you're going to look to put an exit procedure in place where you bring younger people on and over time pass it off to them? You should be thinking about those things from day one. Now, of course, there's the planning element of it, which we discussed, which is when you're somebody who's lucky enough to grow and to put a strategy in place and to execute on it. But you have to plan for the bad times too. I mean, what if the 3 Ds, death, disability, divorce? If you or one of your partners passes away, if one of your partners can no longer perform your abilities because you're disabled, or if there's a divorce action that impacts the ownership interest of somebody in one of these entities and makes it not possible for them to own the whole interest they had, those things should be addressed for everybody's sake. And if they're putting the business first, they won't have a problem having that conversation and putting things in place to account for that.
That's true.
So that's something we spent almost no time on, exit strategies, right? On so many of the ventures that we've participated in until we started collaborating, Jim, right? And walking through these things. It's something you for whatever reason, I guess, in the moment, you just don't think about the exit.
You're in the mindset of, like you said, go, 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 and you're just not thinking about those little things that...
Nobody likes to think about that. People who go into business tend to to some extent, plan and execute. Nobody wants to think about if they're going to die. People tend to go with the thing that's the immediate need, and it always seems far off until it's not.
Yes.
And you're not, as a business owner, going to be able to walk in one day and say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm turning in my papers, and I'm going to get paid what I need to carry my lifestyle for the rest of my life. Right. That's something that you have to plan for, and I think a lot of people don't think in those terms. And even we've all seen, right? I mean, people have in their businesses, there's a lot of emotional capital there, but that doesn't translate financially to the next person. So you can be somebody who works yourself half to death and builds what your clients, your customers love as a great business, and then you hit the point where you're done. There might not be anything there to turn over. So, I mean, planning at some stage of the game to put a procedure in place to make that happen is key to making sure that you can, if you're lucky enough to survive your business, live the life that you want after your business. And if you're looking at your business as a separate entity, which you should, most people, I think, when they take themselves out of it, they want to see their business continue. They want to see a legacy. And if you plan it right, then you're legacy planning for your business as well, whether it's your kids, family, somebody else to keep it going.
So can we talk in detail about one or two specifics of exits? How do you structure it? What are the things people should be thinking about, at least as they take this leap of faith in life? Is this buy sells between partners? Is it
buy sells, estate planning documents? The thing that I like about the business exit structuring is, as opposed to the real estate work that we do, which tends to be process oriented, and of course you get thrown off your path along the way, and you figure out your way back. The business exit stuff, it's really more artwork, and it starts with a conversation of where do you want to end up? I mean, sometimes someone knows that they have a next generation of their family that's going to take something over, and that's the plan, and they're putting it in place. So it's structuring to account for that happening as the first choice, and that may include that one child is going to take it over and one's not, and how do we account for that financially in the estate planning end of it. Another way may be that you say, I know that my children are not going to take it over. Mm-hmm. I have a successor within my organization, but we have to figure out, generally speaking, people aren't going to have the money to buy a business cash out of pocket as a successor. So there are ways to structure it financially to allow for a person who is there to buy in later, and also to remain committed to the buy-in, and to allow the person who is there, to sunset out. And another way is you can wake up one day and say, I got older than I realized, quicker than I wanted to, and I don't have a successor in place. I can plan to maybe bring some young blood into my business and set it up where we work together to grow it for a few years, and then at some point there's a buyout from there. So those are just some basic descriptions. I mean, it can just be structured a bunch of different ways, and it really is a team effort. I personally do buy sells. I do operating agreements, things along those, which can have those provisions, things along those lines. But you have to have, if it's done right, you have an estate planning attorney involved. You're going to have a financial planner involved. Of course, you have an accountant involved, and possibly a tax lawyer, depending on the situation. But it starts with the conversation. It starts with the question of, what do you think that you want to do? And just getting people to realize that at some point that the control is going to be out of their hands. They have to turn it over, whatever their driving purpose is. If it's just themselves and money, if it's their family, if it's their business, that putting a plan in place for the next steps is critically important to whatever their driving purpose is to what they do.
So these are the types of things, folks, that we're trying to articulate and convey to the audience as you may be thinking about taking this step, and you may be thinking about a shift in life, and certainly again we encourage that type of stuff. It's just there is so much to think about, right? If you're starting a company, and I bet if you asked 9 out of 10 people, they would not list, I have to go see an attorney, and then I have to see a tax specialist, I have to go see an estate planner, right? These are the types of things that have to get insurance policies with the partners. Like, these are things that I would say 9 out of 10 folks that are making the transition, right? New to this kind of side of the world would never even think about.
But it's exciting stuff if you give yourself the opportunity to think about it, because who doesn't want to build something that they can pass on in one way or the other? And you do have some time, you put your basic protections in place for what happens if something goes wrong in the beginning, but you do have some time to think about it. It's something that remains a concept, and something that don't know if you want to call it pie in the sky, depending on where you want to on where you want to go, I guess. But if you look at how many, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, you throw out these tremendously successful people and what they did, who they've been exit planning all the way. They want to give it to charity. They want to give a big bunch to charity. It's something that they really get excited about. And I think that when people look at it from that perspective at the right time, they can sort of let it ferment in their mind. And then from there, again, the concept always drives the plan. And that's where it goes.
So I think that's another eye-opening thing is folks don't recognize, well, what do you mean I can't just give this money to charity? What do you mean I can't just hand this down? It's my money. It's my business. Mm-hmm. Doesn't work that way.
Right. No, you have to set it up right. You have to plan the right way. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where things are going to happen that you don't plan, you probably don't want, and then you're usually leaving a mess in the hands of somebody, whether it be your family or whoever else is left to fight over what you left behind.
So another area we've spent a lot of time in these documents is the dispute resolution, right? When you do have a disagreement, the real uncomfortable discussion about how does it get elevated, right? Exactly. What are the voting rights? You clearly prescribing different levels, because there's different levels of the weight of the decision, right? And as you escalate through that, we've seen enough, unfortunately, of partnerships come and go over the years, where, again, day one, everyone seemed to be all in and excited. And, being on the real estate side of it, we're a part of that dream. We sell them properties. We help them buy and sell and profit and do well and excel. And it does seem more times than not, unfortunately, that we find, for whatever reason or another, they hit these bumps in the road, and just having the documents crafted in a way where you're addressing these things thoroughly to make it a little bit less painful when you have the issues, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. It's I think probably you're bound together. When you have to have some trust when you start, but unfortunately, it doesn't always remain for whatever reason. And I think one of the toughest provision in any operating agreement or stockholders agreement is defining what happens if everybody else wants to get rid of somebody. Yeah. Nobody's comfortable saying, hey, if I lose a popularity contest with my partners at any time, if they just, for some reason, their worst instincts kick in and we've put in all this work and they decide, there's 4 of us and 3 of them decide, you know what, if we get rid of him, there's a lot more for us. Nobody's comfortable with that, so you're not going to have it. You have, theft, you have fraud. Those are thresholds. If somebody crosses, they deserve it, but then it becomes more gray. So as far as what happens if there's an issue amongst the partners is very, very tough. And at the end of the day, I think usually it does go into trust as far as that area goes, if other members want somebody out. Now, if you want to get out, if we're talking withdrawal provisions, then yes, that's something I know that we've spent a lot of time crafting, and it's when we work together, it's very important. It's very important because you also our time is valuable. It's a finite resource, and you don't want to be stuck in something that you don't believe in anymore. And you have to be able to get out if you want to. So those are things that we have to be careful with for everybody's sake. On the other hand, you don't want a partner to pull out at a time when it would benefit the person leaving but hurt everybody else. So those, again, as you said, those are things that can go in a number of different degrees in a number of different directions. And we put thought into crafting, and there's going to be some uncomfortability with everybody with possible scenarios in their minds. But you try to hit as much of the most likely ones as you can, and then you have to roll with trust.
No question about it. Anytime you get to the number 3, things get really complicated, right? Once you get to the number 3, things get wicked tough. It's just human nature. Allegiances are formed.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
teams are created. Unwritten, teams start to form, and people start to connect with different members of the company in one way or another, and inevitably you end up with some sort of imbalance once you get to the number 3.
Some of the smartest and most pragmatic people that I see, they get in these disputes and you just see a totally different side of them. Emotions kick in, it gets crazy, and that's why some business people, they won't be involved in an entity unless they have managing control, unless the adage partners are for dancing. We won't get involved unless there's nobody else is a decision maker. But there's no doubt. I mean, two people sitting down together, you're either going to agree or not. Three people, it's a whole different dynamic.
Yep.
And then if you grow it out, I guess depending on the personalities, it can be better or worse. But
we got to a point after doing a number of these with James where, for us, if there is not the ability for us to make a final decision in the documents, we want kill language now, right? We don't want to go through these crazy, drawn-out disagreements where, and this is another mistake that I've seen so many times in these documents, not only do you have to prescribe what the decisioning looks like in the event there's a disagreement, you've got to put time clocks to it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to very clearly define, and again, something that James has pointed out in documents, and now this is just part of every document that we're drafting when we're getting involved in an entity. It's not, if you can't come to an agreement, then this happens. It's a board meeting must be called within 2 weeks of someone sending a notice that there's a dispute. If you're not successful and you adjourn it, in another 2 weeks you have to reconvene.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
Right? I'm giving you James's language now, right?
The worst thing, my nightmare, the worst thing that can happen to me as a transactional attorney is that one of my documents ends up in court. Because I can tell you, as sure as I'm sitting here, a litigator is going to find some angle to attack it. And so for every provision you draw up, there are more aspects, more components to it that you can add. And it would never end. It has to end at some point. But we lock in on the dispute points, as you said, because those are the ones that are most likely to come into play at the hardest moments. And you have to have those deadlines. If you leave things gray when people are looking to fight with each other, it's problem after problem.
They'll find it.
And you guys have been through the thought process enough where you're machines with it. And to our conversation before about connecting and being around the right people, you're among the clients for sure that give me ideas and things that I work with in food for thought. It's not just me driving the conversation or the thought. It's you guys making me say, hey, maybe that's something that I can do better, and allows me to bring more value to the rest of the people that I'm around. And
Absolutely. We've written enough of them. We've collaborated together on enough of them that we're just at a point where if you get to that third board meeting and there's not a resolution, the company gets dissolved.
And now we're at the point where if one of my documents ends up in court, he's going to replay the podcast. You said it yourself.
Exactly.
Well,
too funny.
There are so many. The point here we were trying to drive home, folks, at least Becca and I wanted to drive home, was there are so many things to think about, and there are so many things to contemplate in these documents. If you're thinking about going out and starting a company or an entity and getting involved, you have to cover the bases. And a guy like James, for us, has done a really great job doing that for us. For that, we're really thankful, because it does make it, as hard as it is to craft it in the moment and have those hard discussions with your partners, it is infinitely easier when things go a little sideways to tighten things up. So we're already running up on an hour here. It's like crazy how fast this is. James, how do people get in touch with you? If people want to reach out, what's the best way to reach you?
Email jt@nynj.law. Nice and easy.
Beautiful. Well,
That is easy.
we really appreciate having you on today.
Thank you for having me. I know the Casandra team for some time. I mean, you guys have a dynamic group of personalities who bring different skills to the table, and I know you've been accomplishing, driving up the game on Staten Island, and I appreciate being a part of it.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the time. As always, folks, please keep the suggestions coming, the thoughts coming, the ideas, the criticisms, the whole nine. We're really having a lot of fun with this show, so keep it coming, guys. Everyone out there, please stay safe.